Professor Jaffrelot, thank you so much for joining our interview series. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Let me start with the first question. How has Hindu nationalism and Hindutva evolved, and what historical factors shaped its current form, especially in its intersection with populism in contemporary Indian politics?
Well, this is a movement that is now 100 years old. It was initiated in the 1920s. 1923, the first ideological charter of this movement is published by Savarkar. Hindutva, who is a Hindu, is the title. And the ideology then is very much what it has remained till today, a way to define the Indian nation on the basis of Hinduism, or more precisely on the basis of the Hindu people. Hindus are supposed to be the sons of the soil, the main community, the main people, and minorities have to pay allegiance to their religion, to their culture, or admit that they have to live as second-class citizens. This ideology has not changed very much. The organization has evolved. In 1925, 2 years after Savarkar's book, you have the birth of the RSS, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, that is the organization embodying Hindu nationalism. An organization that is not political in the first place. I mean, it doesn't want to play any political role. They want to organize the Hindus and to make them more cohesive, more muscular. So they have a very paramilitary style for disciplining the youth, for disciplining the young Indians, the young Hindus. This organization will remain the same and has remained the same since then, except that after independence in the 40s, they started to build additional subsidiaries, a student union, a trade union, a labor union, a peasant union, and a political party. And this political party is today the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, that is the party of Narendra Modi. And Narendra Modi has probably changed into nationalism more than anybody, because he has endowed it with a populist dimension. So till Narendra Modi, you have a very disciplined, cadre-based organization, party. With Narendra Modi, after the 2014 elections, you see a mass appeal that makes a huge difference. And as a result, BJP becomes the largest Indian party. I mean, a majority of the members of parliament of the lower house now belong to BJP.
All right. Secondly, what does Hindutva's proliferation mean for the Indian democracy? How does Hindutva challenge the secularism, pluralism, and multiculturalism of the Indian state?
Well, as I said, the Hindutva ideology considers that minorities either pay allegiance to Hindu culture or accept to be in a dominated situation. So you have a rejection of multiculturalism. You have a rejection of secularism. You know, secularism in India means that all religious communities are on a par. The state is equally benevolent vis-a-vis them all. And that's enshrined in the Constitution. There are articles in the Constitution saying that minorities can apply for subsidies for running their own schools and so on and so forth. That's not something Hindu nationalism accepted ever. They constantly said, no, we should not look at citizens as equal. Hindus must prevail. Hinduism must prevail. The Hindu nationalist definition of Hinduism must prevail. That's, of course, bad for multiculturalism, bad for democracy, but it is not so surprising because we all know that populism is against pluralism. You know, the moment you say the people are enshrined, epitomized by the sons of the soil, you make it very difficult for the minorities to get the collective rights they deserve in a democratic multicultural setup. So India, in a way, is following the pattern we've seen in so many other places, including Israel, you know, the place where the notion of ethnic democracy has been introduced by Sami Smoha, political scientist of Israel. Ethnic democracy can be de jure, like in Israel, or can be de facto, like in India. De facto, the minorities are second-class citizens because they don't have an equal access to the job market, to the housing market. There is a discrimination, and that's exactly what we see today vis-a-vis the Muslims.
All right. How would you characterize the relationship between Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, and populism in the context of BJP's rise to power? What factors have contributed or paved the way for BJP's and Modi's electoral victory in 2014 that you just mentioned? How has the BJP shaped and promoted Hindu nationalism, and is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership style effective in this context?
Well, Hinduism and Hindutva are not the same, for sure. You know, they claim that they are the same. They consider that Hindutva is nothing else but Hinduism. Far from that. You know, Hinduism is a religion that does not have a corpus. There is no book with a capital B. There is no clergy. There is no church. There is no unique center of gravity. On the contrary, the unit of analysis is the Sampradaya, the sectarian movement, and the sectarian movements have all been created by gurus who have displayed a great spiritual creativity. The unity comes from the caste system, comes from the social organization, not from the religious setup that is very diverse, very diverse. The best metaphor for Hinduism is the banyan tree, where you don't know where the trunk is, you don't know where the core is, because all the gurus are equally legitimate in their manner, in the way they initiate disciples towards salvation. Well, Hindutva is an ideology, and it will not look at Hinduism as a creed. They are not interested in salvation path. They are not interested in belief. They are interested in the making of a people. Hindus are not believers. They are a people. By the way, you see their affinities with Judaism, because it's very difficult to also differentiate, or Zionism, very difficult to differentiate Zionism from the people, the Jewish people, the Jews. Same here. Now, they have built this ideology and they have instrumentalized Hinduism. For instance, in the 1980s, they started a movement for the recovery of a site, a secret site for them, Ayodhya, a town in northern India.
The Babri Masjid.
Was exactly the place where you had the Babri Masjid, a mosque that had been built in 1528 by the first Mughal emperor, Babur. And they claimed that this mosque had been built on the in the place of a Hindu temple. A Hindu temple that would have been built on the birthplace of Lord Ram, one of the avatars of Vishnu, Lord Vishnu. That is a belief that Hindus share in large numbers, and in the 1980s they used this sentiment for mobilizing Hindus against Muslims, provoke riots, and finally in 1992 destroy the mosque before rebuilding, quote unquote, building a new Hindu temple that has been inaugurated in January this year. Well, this is a typical example of the instrumentalization of religion by ideologues. But I repeat, Hinduism and Hindutva are certainly not the same.
All right. How would you describe Narendra Modi's populism, and how does it differ from other populisms, in particular populist parties in Europe?
Well, there are many similarities. You know, populism for me implies, number one, a disintermediation. You know, the leader relates directly to the people. So Modi did not rely very much on his party, did not rely very much on the RSS either. He is a pure product of RSS. He is, of course, a RSS Swayamsevak volunteer. He joined the movement when he was only 7 years old. But when he became chief minister of Gujarat, he preferred to build his own parallel power structure. And this parallel power structure was really promoting him, not promoting the organization, the party, but his persona. And he started to relate directly to the people using social media before everybody else, using holograms, using TV channel built in his name, Namo TV, for instance. Number one, disintermediation. Number two, the populist is a man who can claim that he's from the people, that he is the people. And at the same time, he has also charisma in such a way that, yes, he's one of us, can people say. And Modi can appear as one of them, one of the people, one of the plebeians, because he comes from a low caste background. He comes from a very modest family, and he speaks like the people. At least he claims that he speaks like, he pretends that he speaks like the people, and he's close to the poor. He is always speaking about his poverty when he was a child, and he's close to the poor. But at the same time, he's seen as charismatic, as an exceptional character, and in fact, he did exceptional things. Since 1971, nobody dared to send military aircrafts bombarding Pakistan the way he did in 2019. Never before had a chief minister presided over an anti-Muslim pogrom like he did in 2002. Well, so many examples of exceptional deeds. So that's the number two criterion. A man of the people, but of a different quality.
Right.
That's very important for understanding the, I would say, populist style of Narendra Modi. And that's very common among other populists. You know, we could certainly apply that to many others, including Erdogan, including Duterte, including including Trump, who claims that he's not from the elite because he's victimized by the elite. Modi claims that he's victimized all the time by the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty, by the elite, the liberal elite, the English-speaking elite. You know, he's a much more a vernacular person, a person who speaks in Hindi more than English most of the time. Now, there are two other very important criteria of populism that Narendra Modi fulfills, and they have to do with ideology. He is a national populist. He speaks in the name of the majority, not in the name of all the citizens. So he keeps polarizing. In the ongoing election campaign, he has been so critical of the Muslims, denigrating Muslims openly, in a very, I would say, mean manner. You know, the style is also very vulgar, but because he wants to mobilize the Hindu voters, not all the voters. So he is a national populist. You know, the same way Netanyahu, when he converses, does not try to get the Muslim vote. You know, he doesn't care for the Muslim vote. On the contrary, he will try to polarize by attacking the colonies and so on and so forth. I mean, attacking the Muslims, Palestinians in the colonies. The similarity is also striking there. And the fourth, but very important dimension that I want to add, to bring in the picture is, like many other populists, is authoritarian. And populism leads to authoritarianism almost automatically, because the moment you can say, I am the people, there is no place for diversity, dissent, opposition. You know, if you are opposing the man who is the people, you are anti-national. So you're illegitimate. And he has kept disqualifying the opposition leaders. And he has even sent many of them behind bars. Today you have, for the first time in the history of India, a chief minister, the chief minister of Delhi, who is in prison. And that's one example among others. There are other people, there are other political prisoners. And number two, the Congress party, the #1 opposition party, has seen several of his bank accounts frozen because, again, they are seen as threats which are illegitimate. And the media is also captured by the ruling party, most of the time because news channels, including NDTV, the last independent channel, have been bought by oligarchs, friends of the ruling party. So that's another very important criterion of populism. Populism results in authoritarianism, and this authoritarianism is conducive to fight against opposition and the transformation of the election competition as a non-level playing field. It's a non-level playing field because of the media coverage of the election campaigns, also because of money, because the kind of resources, financial resources the BJP has nothing to see with the opposition. The opposition is, of course, at the receiving end of so many rules and regulations, making it very difficult for them to finance the election campaign. So it's not a level playing field. Still, and I end on that, in a populist regime like this one, the leader has to take the risk of an election. You know, it's not Russia, it's not China. The populists need the popular mandate. It needs the legitimacy coming from the vote, the electorate, to be in a position to say, I can prevail because I am the people. And of course, when you take the risk of the vote, of the election, you take the risk of losing. And that's why it's an authoritarian regime but not a fascist regime. It's a different style, category.
Sure. What role do the BJP and Modi play in promoting exclusionary practices against Muslim minorities in India? How does the nexus of Hindu nationalism and populism impact social cohesion, diversity, and India's democratic ideals?
Well, this time, Modi has been explicitly communal, using words vis-à-vis the Muslims he had never used before publicly. Because he's on the defensive, he needs to mobilize his support base as much as he can. But most of the time, till recently, he was not explicitly anti-Muslim. So the dirty job was made by others. And there was a very clear division of labor. You know, the party, the government tried to remain clean, and on the ground, by contrast, you had groups we call Vigilantes. These Vigilantes are indulging in cultural policing, patrolling the campuses, university campuses, to check whether Muslim boys are talking to Hindu girls, to prevent them from interacting with Hindu girls because of the fear of them seducing Hindu women, converting Hindu women. Well, it sounds very banal. In practice, it could be very ugly and result in violence. Violence is the order of the day when they patrol highways to check whether the truck drivers are not taking bovines to the slaughterhouse, the cow being the sacred animal par excellence in India. And this movement known as cow protection is clearly a way to discipline Muslims, harass Muslims, and you've had many cases of lynchings. Similarly, you see the same groups making it very difficult for Hindus to sell their flat or house to Muslims in mixed neighborhoods, to make sure that there is no interaction, that ghettoization remains the order of the day, and Muslims are getting ghettoized for that reason, among others, including socioeconomic decline, of course, because, of course, all these practices go together with discrimination on the job market, and Muslims are suffering socioeconomically. Well, these are the daily routines for Muslims who are very fearful, who live in fear, especially when they are in small minorities. But what is new is the passing of laws which make them second-class citizens, not only de facto, but also de jure. So, for instance, a very important law that was passed in 2019, the Citizenship Amendment Act, said that only non-Muslim refugees from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan would be eligible to Indian nationality and citizenship. Many other laws have been passed at the state level, making interreligious marriages very difficult, making conversion out of Hinduism very difficult, making the selling of house to someone of a different community very difficult. So BJP, Modi at the center remain clean. On the ground, you see Vigilantes doing the dirty job, but lately we also see governments at the state level and also at the national level indulging in practices which are really communal. That really something making the de
You say
facto.
criminal, Professor?
We say communal in India because
Communal.
yeah, communal in India is the word that was used, especially under Nehru in the 50s and 60s, to say, well, when you indulge in communalism, you're not true to nationalism. Communalism is either Hindu, Muslim, Sikh. Nationalism is Indian. So feel like an Indian, do not indulge in communalism. And I find this distinction still very useful. Yeah.
Right. You often refer to the banalization of Islamophobia. How has this banalization evolved as BJP took root in Indian politics?
The thing is, we have the center of gravity of the public discourse shifted. So banalization for me finds expression in the acceptance of words which would have never been legitimate on the public scene 15, 20, 25 years ago. No. To say that Muslims have many wives, that they indulge in polygamy, to say that Muslims have many children precisely because they have many wives, to say that they are paying allegiance to Mecca, to the Middle East, all these things would not have been possible 15, 20, 25 years ago. They would have been sanctioned. They would have been considered as out of the legitimate discourse. This is now totally different. There is a banalization in that sense of the prejudice. The prejudice is very much commonplace. It's not only in India. This is something you find elsewhere, but it has come to India in a big way. The kind of words, the kind of stigmatization that have become so routinized is just amazing. And it's find also expressions in physical violence, including lynching, was not at all part of the scenario of public life again 10, 15, 20 years ago.
All right. To what extent has Hindu nationalism influenced foreign policy decisions under the Modi government?
Well, it's not so easy to make this relation, the correlation between the two. Well, vis-a-vis Pakistan, certainly. But even there, you have to qualify this assertion. Narendra Modi invited Nawaz Sharif at his swearing-in ceremony in 2014. He stopped over in Lahore to wish Nawaz Sharif happy birthday in 2015. He wanted to normalize relations with Pakistan, and Nawaz Sharif was the right man for being engaged that way. That stopped after terrorist attacks in India, in fact, probably by jihadi groups which were not happy at all by this normalization. The jihadi groups have always made normalization processes derail between India and Pakistan. They live on this. And therefore, after that, Modi became probably more aggressive than any of his predecessors, except Indira Gandhi, vis-a-vis Pakistan, in the name of an ideology. You can say that the fact that he was an Hindu nationalist leader probably made some difference there, but not initially, only after 2015-16. But for the rest, you see affinities with Israel probably understood, or that can be understood only because of ideological proximity and a common rejection of Muslims, or Islamists at least. The fact that the Modi government has not been critical of Netanyahu lately, it's very, very revealing.
This is the next question, Professor. Let me ask it. Why does Israel present itself as an idle polity for BJP?
Well, it is because there are affinities between Zionism and Hindutva. And I've mentioned one already. These two ideologies look at their people as not made of believers of one religion, but as the descendants of original inhabitants of a sacred land. You know, there are very few religions in the world about which you can say those who practice it today have in their veins the blood of the original inhabitants of a land where you have the sacred sites which matter the most. So you have the two sides of the same coin. You have the idea of the people, a kind of ethnic unity, and you have the location, a sacred land. They have this in common. And again, there are very few countries with this kind of characteristics. And on top of it, they can say we are there for 3,000 years, you know, or 4,000 years, where they don't mind. They can be very, very generous in terms of years. So they have this common, I would say, ground. Now, they have, of course, one more thing in common, and that is the fear of Islam and the fear of Islamism. And this fear is certainly exaggerated, and they play the victimization card very well on both sides. But this fear is not only imagined. They've been Islamist attacks. You know, the jihadi attacks on India in the 2000s have made a big impact. And these jihadi attacks targeted, of course, Kashmir, but as you may remember, Mumbai, 2008, and Delhi, 2001. So this common enemy, so to speak, has brought them closer. And even before BJP took over, as early as the 2000s, the Congress-led government could consider that to be closer to Israel for security reasons would make sense. And that's why they also collaborate in military terms.
All right. Lastly, Professor, do you think the electoral victory of Geert Wilders and his Party for Freedom opens a new chapter in European politics, signaling the normalization of far-right parties? How concerned are you about a possible surge of far-right parties in the upcoming European Parliament elections in June?
Well, it's certainly something we will see across the board. Most of the European countries will witness the rise of their far-right parties. But interestingly, they are not on the same page all of them. And that's something we sometimes miss. You know, you have the parties which are trying hard to appear more moderate. Marine Le Pen is desperately trying to appear as more moderate, and it works. You have, on the contrary, parties which are on the radicalization way, and in Germany, on the contrary, we have a radicalization of the extreme right. So the trajectories are not the same. Not only that, the way they look at Russia is not the same. Many national populists in the East, including Poland, including the peace in Poland, have identified Russia as the main threat, when many other parties, including Orban's Fidesz, will still consider that Putin is a role model. And Putin has been the role model for many others, including Salvini's Liga, including Le Pen's RN. So that's another bone of contention. So they will not join hands so easily. For instance, they will not form one group in the European Parliament easily. The risk is very minimal, in fact, for all these reasons. Now, it doesn't mean that they will not change the European Parliament. And my fear is that they will systematically join hands on issues like immigration, the Green Deal, so many policies which will be very difficult to continue in the same spirit as the spirit under which they've been initiated. So yes, the risk is very, very much there that we have a different Europe. They don't want to leave the EU. No, they want to transform the EU from the inside now. So Brexit is not something they want to emulate. By the way, the cost, the price Britain has paid is so high that nobody wants to do it again. So they will not leave the EU. They will try to transform the EU from the inside, and the European Parliament will be the laboratory for that.
All right. Professor Jaffrelot, thank you so very much.
You're most welcome.